Hello everyone, thank you for joining us today for our Beat the January Blues, ways to support your employees' mental and physical health. Today we are joined by myself, Sam Holdway, Health and Wellbeing Consultant with Westfield Health, and I'm actually your host today. We're also joined by Kathy Lawson, Independent Workplace Health and Wellbeing Consultant, Trainer and Coach, and also MA, who's an accredited Health and Wellbeing Coach with Westfield Health. So I'm just going to go through some housekeeping with you. The webinar is being recorded and you've joined in listen only mode. Handouts are in the downloads section, and during the webinar we'll be asking some poll questions to include you, the audience members' experience. The polls are completely anonymous and optional, but we will share the overall results. There will be time at the end to ask speakers your questions. Put them in the chat box and we'll try to answer as many as we can. A survey should appear on your screen at the end of the webinar. It will be great if you can give us your feedback, as it will help us to develop future webinars. And you'll also receive a recording of the webinar afterwards by email. So let's get into what we'll cover. Why employees have the responsibility to look after their employees' mental and physical health in the workplace. The benefits of providing workplace wellbeing support, and how to support employees' mental and physical health in the workplace, both in person and virtually. Okay, so slide 3. On average, adults of working age spend on 9.5 average hours a day of sedentary time, and that's from the British Heart Foundation. 40% of people say that the pandemic has made their mental health worse, and there has been 400% increase in Google searches for anxiety disorder in 2021. 51% of employees said they are less than a month away from burnout, and in winter there are links between the darker nights and a drop in employee productivity levels. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen so we can get into a discussion with our panel. So Kathy, first question to you. As a workplace health and wellbeing consultant, why do you think it's important for managers to look after their employees' mental health? Is there anything different or extra support that we need to do during the winter?
So Sam, I mean, let's be honest, when the nights are getting darker and it's hard to get up in the morning, we all actually feel like we want more duvet days and we'd like to be hibernating. However, in reality, managers should be looking after the mental health and well-being of their employees all year round. It can be more difficult in the winter because we're not getting enough daylight hours, so we're not getting enough vitamin D. So it can have a contribution to things like developing seasonal affective disorder. So it is important that managers are aware of this. And when they're conducting their performance reviews, that they're thinking about conducting wellbeing reviews as well. It's good practice to do that. It's good practice for managers to be a bit more aware of their employees, to get to know them. And it's so difficult when we're working on these type of platforms to actually make more effort to actually contact people and be more proactive about it, get to know them, and don't be frightened to ask questions about how are you getting on. And one of the concerns that I see is that managers feel like they need to fix people, because that's what they're paid to do. Managers are paid to fix and to solve problems, and they feel like if they ask somebody, well, how are you, and they say, well, not great actually, they think, oh my goodness, I don't know what to do, I'm going to refer it to HR. That's not good practice. It's better that they take responsibility for asking people, how are you, realizing they don't need fixing, but simply listening, connecting and offering support, asking them what they need. And if you want more of a formal response to this, if you look at the health and safety executive, then I've got it down here, in 2019, 54% of all time lost at work was due to work-related stress and mental health issues. So it's so important now that managers are aware of this and they take more effort to connect with people, because this is going to reduce absenteeism, it's going to increase productivity, and all of those things affect the bottom line of the business. And so, yeah, really, really important that managers take a proactive approach to looking after people at all times, and in particular in the winter.
Thank you for that, Kathy. So, Emma, now let's ask you a question. Why is it so important that we take care of our physical health during during winter?
As winter months start to appear, it hits us very quickly. And even though, particularly in the UK, I feel like we're mostly in winter, we become a lot less inclined to exercise. We're a lot less likely to go out for a day in the countryside or walk to work because of, that wet winter weather. And we just overall, especially during these periods of months, we just don't spend as much time looking after our physical health. And physical activity is so extremely important in improving our overall well-being, not just sort of for our physical health too. It reduces things like fatigue, enhances our job satisfaction, it helps with optimism and self-esteem, it helps us with better management for stress, and just improving our overall mood and mental health as well as our physical health. So making sure that we're focusing on physical activity is absolutely crucial to both our well-being, but also for employees from a business perspective, to making sure that they have that good job satisfaction.
Brilliant, thank you. So that now takes us on to our first poll. So I'm going to launch the poll now. The question is, has your company provided any extra mental well-being support to its employees during the winter months? The answers are yes. No, it stayed the same. No, we don't currently offer any mental wellbeing support. If you answer yes, it would be great to hear some examples of what your workplace has been doing. So do feel free to add that in on the chat function so we can read out some initiatives on what you've been doing within your workplace. Brilliant, quick response. I'm just going to close that poll now. So 86% of you said yes, your company has provided extra mental wellbeing support to its employees during the winter months, which is really great to hear. Wanted to see if anyone's added any comments as to what they're doing.
I remember a company that I was working with, and they actually put in place a whole load of mental health first aiders. There was about 30 that they had. This was a public sector company, and they had about 400 conversations over 10 months. And as a consequence of that, they were able to reduce their sickness absence figures, because they knew that before that, most of the sickness absence was down to depression, anxiety, and mental health conditions. And then having the mental health first aiders in place and other wellbeing initiatives, it actually reduced it by 59%, which equated to about £30,000. So if anybody needs a reason to put these things in place, it's great to see that organisations are already doing that. Then it affects the bottom line of your business as well. There are those inextricable links between people's well-being and the performance and engagement of employees.
We've had some really good comments as well. Laughing yoga, that's quite an interesting one, and people are doing mental health talks, health and minds as well. So it looks like we've had a lot of really good initiatives within the workplace to support mental health, which is really good to hear. So let's move on to our next question to Kathy. Sorry, not Kathy, you provide workplace wellbeing support through delivering webinars, coaching, and encouraging employees to partake in physical activity. What are the main benefits that you've noticed through all of these wellbeing activities?
It's so important to provide employees these kind of things to improve their physical health. And particularly with now the change from working from home, and for many that doesn't seem to be going anywhere. So we are kind of staying with this thing that we thought was temporary at one point of working from home. So having sort of a skill set to provide employees is so important. And not only does this give a huge benefit to the employee, but also to you as an organization, it can have a huge impact. With kind of working from home, particularly we saw with our staff, is that we're taking away all that kind of easier, light activity that was just so mundane to us in our day-to-day. Things like our walk to work, or just the overall commute, movement around the office. So just that simple thing of leaving your desk and going to grab a coffee or going to chat to a colleague, all that has now pretty much gone while we're working from home. So we're seeing a huge decrease in that physical activity. So at Westfield, we started to use a range of tools for our employees' physical health. One of these being, we have got an in-house active space. It's fully equipped with incredible gym equipment and fitness classes like yoga and spin, but it doesn't have to be expensive for an organization to see those results and see an improvement in their employees' well-being. So for example, things like 5-minute step classes going into meetings, just getting staff out of their seats in the meeting, stretching while we're in meetings, really simple things that aren't going to increase people's time in the day, but are going to massively help boost their mood, help their engagement, help them concentrate better. Kind of, we saw as one story within our teams, there are going to be some teams that don't want to get up, and do a little bit of dancing or go to the gym. They just want to do something simple from their desk. And we started doing 5 minutes of stretching exercises. So simple, just as we started the meeting, a couple of little stretches while people were having a chat. And you saw the employees smiling, because obviously it can feel a lot strange doing a couple of stretches on a Zoom call, but it very quickly increased their mood. And we've taken this hybrid approach and changes of, not being in the office. We started seeing a lot more engagement online doing these things and changing our fitness classes to virtual than we actually saw when people were in person in the office, which was great. But it can have just a huge benefit and increase productivity. So it's so important to try and find those little things.
Oh, great answer. Thank you for that. Kathy, can you give our audience some examples and tips for supporting employees' mental health, whether that is virtually or in-person support?
Yeah, I think the starting point, Sam, is to be more proactive. That's the thing, because as Amy's just been describing, we don't have the water cooler moments now. We don't have the brushing against somebody as they're walking to work and thinking, oh, they don't look themselves today. So it requires us to be more proactive. And I say as well, be nosy. We've got this thing, haven't we, in the UK about not being nosy and asking too many personal questions. But if ever there's a time to be nosy, now is it. To say, how are you? How are you getting on? How are you coping with the pandemic? What support have you got? How are you sleeping? Are you getting any exercise? Are you getting any time outside? Are you connecting with your friends and family? So, and this helps you get to know people as well. And I think if you're more open about what's going on for you, people are more open to tell you what's going on for them. So you create a better connection. So pay attention to what's going on with your people. So are they starting to put the cameras off? Do they not want to engage? Is their communication becoming a little bit snippy? So something has changed, something is different. So pay attention. I always think as well, ask 3 times how somebody is. So you ask once and they go, yeah, I'm fine. And many of you have heard me say this loads of times. We know what FINE stands for: freaked out, insecure, neurotic, and emotional. So ask again, ask again. So how are you? Now, if you have to ask 3 times, either you're not the right person or it's not the right time. So maybe leave it and come back to it another time. So do a regular wellbeing check-in alongside your performance reviews. You've already mentioned this. Do a wellbeing review, but formalise that a little bit more and make it weekly. Do a little wellbeing weekly check-in, maybe alongside your exercises that you're doing at the same time, and say, right, let's just check in with your mental and emotional health. We've just done your physical bit. What about your mental and emotional? How are you feeling right now? What's going on in your mind? That's it. We don't have to make this complicated. So what else? Have I got anything else on my little list here? Put the wellbeing initiatives in place that we've already been talking about so far. And I think finally, let's make discussions about mental health as common and as regular and as habitual as having a conversation about our physical health. Because let's make it okay to talk about, I'm feeling a bit down, I'm feeling a bit fed up, I'm feeling a bit anxious, in the same way that I might say to you, oh, you know what, my back really hurts today, or I'm feeling a bit creaky, or I've really banged my arm when I was doing my exercise. Let's make that normal. And that's, I think, some of the tips that I would give to people right now. So.
Absolutely spot on. It's removing that stigma from the mental health, isn't it, as well, that, you know, you might not be having a good day, and it's okay not to have a good day. And I think we've touched upon it before. That's why mental health first aiders are absolutely brilliant alongside physical first aiders, isn't it, Kathy?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not, you know, it's not a legal requirement yet to have a mental health first aider, but it is absolutely good practice. And you've seen the statistics, what, 400% increase in people searching for help with anxiety disorders. So mental health, yeah, we could have this discussion about, is it because it's being reported a lot more? Well, yes, it probably is, but it's probably also on the increase because of isolation, because of not being able to connect in the same way. We are a lot more aware about mental health now. We have a better language for talking about it. It's not going away. It's only ever going to increase. And, you know, as you know, I deliver a lot of the mental health first aid training, and I am so busy doing it because organizations are going, oh, wow, we need this now. It's the right thing to do. It's affecting our bottom line. People are going off sick. It's overtaking musculoskeletal issues now with stress and anxiety. So we need to pay attention to this, and it's not before time. And it's good to see. It's good to see organizations embracing this topic and thinking about, and as we've said, it doesn't have to cost a fortune to actually put things in place, and just to be a little bit more proactive around talking to people about their mental health and well-being.
Absolutely. And mental health first aid course is such a brilliant course, Kathy. I really thoroughly enjoyed the course when you trained me a couple of years ago, but also it sits so nicely next to your EAP. So things like doing adding your EAP posters to the back of the toilet doors is an absolute must, because a lot of us don't want to feel like we're breaking down or we're getting upset in front of colleagues, so we take ourselves off to the toilet. And having an EAP telephone line posted in the back of the toilet doors has proven to help people. We've got stories within Westfield of employees going up to consultants to say, you know, they were at the point where they'd written suicide letters, that they had a plan in place, they were going to end their life, and then they went to the toilet one day and saw the EAP poster and then decided to make that telephone call as their last option, and it helped them. So doing things like that, as well as having your mental health first aiders, can really pull that business support together.
I think as well, Sam, it reminds me, and you'll know more about this than me, but you put an amazing initiative in place, Westfield, and it was because you get a lot of things throughout the year, whether it's stress awareness, suicide awareness, mental health awareness. We had Blue Monday, as you know, and so you can piggyback onto those type of initiatives and put other things in place internally. And Westfield had this great idea of getting your wellbeing consultants and your mental health first aiders all together. There's usually tea and cake involved with this as well, and asking people to bring a little post-it note in and write down something about their mental health and stick it all on a board. And so you ended up with this beautiful collage of loads of information about people's thoughts and feelings about mental health, and you've got a team there supporting them in that process. Those type of initiatives cost nothing, they don't take a lot of time, and it just raises awareness. So I think those are really good things to do as well, Sam.
Brilliant. Well, I'm going to open up our next poll. So let me just share that now for everybody. It's, do you feel like you or your team are getting enough movement during working hours? So the answers are yes, no, not sure. Again, if you have any comments that you would like to share on what you're doing within the workplace or what your team are doing within the workplace to get more movement, please feel free to share those comments and we can talk about some of them. But do remember, it's not just about you, it's about your team as well. So are your team getting enough movement? And I appreciate that a lot of us are still working remotely, so you may not know if your team are getting enough movement throughout the day. But answers yes, no, or not sure. I'm just going to leave that poll open for a couple more seconds, just to see if we've got any changes in answers.
I'm really interested to see the results of this one.
Yeah, me too. They're changing. I'm watching them change, so it'll be really interesting to see what that looks like. Emma, do you think you're getting enough movement within your working day?
Definitely am today. Particularly, I definitely find when I'm in the office, I move a lot more than working from home. And when you work from home, I think it almost becomes this reminder to ourselves that before we know it, 4 or 5 hours have passed and all we've done is stare at our laptop and our computer screen. And sometimes it has to become that little reminder that, oh, I've not even moved today, compared to when we were in the office and it's moving from desk to desk, we're going to grab a coffee. So definitely something I even have to remind myself about while I'm working from home.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. So I'm going to close that poll now and share the results. So we've got 65% have said no. So MA, would you like to make a comment on that post at all, as 65% have said no?
Yeah, I'm not too surprised by it at all. Like I kind of just picked on earlier, I think while we are all working from home, it's become a lot less of daily movement. But we have to also remind ourselves that while we are working from home, there's so much we can do, and it doesn't have to be kind of going out to the gym every day. It doesn't have to be, huge 10-kilometer walks or to the same degree we might have done at home. But movement isn't just about getting sweaty and doing certain things, but it's about creating mobility and stretching and smaller things. Just standing up from your chair is a great means of movement. But yeah, there's a lot we can talk about, a lot we can do.
Well, that actually leads us nicely onto my next question to you. So can you give the audience any more ideas and advice for how they can support their employee physical health? And again, this is virtually and in person. And what initiatives have worked well at Westfield Health for our hybrid working approach?
Yeah, of course. It's so important as an employer to have things in place for physical well-being when it comes to your employees. And what works for one person might not work for another. Some people might enjoy things like putting on fitness classes where someone else might not enjoy that. So having a range of a toolkit can be so vital. And there's loads you can do on a whole wide range of budgets and activity levels that can increase movement in a day. So on those kind of larger budgets and on a larger scale, you can implement things like we have in the office, such as an active space and a spin studio and a health and well-being coach, someone to come in and help guide staff. You could even look at things like external class teachers and hiring a teacher to come in and teach things like yoga and fitness classes. There's plenty out there to support that. And even things like having discounts for local gyms, connecting with them is great, and sort of a great means for people. But taking it on a kind of a flip side, there's loads we can do on a smaller budget, and I've picked up on quite a few at the moment. So things like adding 5 or 10 minutes of steps into meetings, stretch activities into them. And if it's something you're unsure of, maybe you're like, I don't feel comfortable kind of teaching that, well, you can head to the Westfield Health YouTube channel as well. And I have filmed quite a few fitness videos on there, things like daily steps and stretching and meditation that you can happily refer to, and even send out as kind of handouts to your employees as well. You can even think about it, get inventive where we can, and when lockdowns and things aren't affecting us. Could you possibly lead some of these team meetings going on a walk and talk? So take it from my team, it's something we've started to implement once a month. We just go down to the local park, and instead of doing our monthly meeting in the office or virtually, we're just having a little wander around the local park, and that's so good for our mental well-being too. We don't get to see each other very often, so having that time is great, and it's outdoors and we're moving. So get inventive. Could we go to the local park and walk around? Could we add some step challenges in? So some little incentives for teams. Can we get teams to pair up and see who can walk the most amount of steps in a week, and have a little incentive for them at the end of that? Could we encourage them to take time? We know we put calendar invites and things in our diaries for meetings and ourselves. Could we, as employers, put little meetings in for teams to say, look, here's half an hour, here's an hour, go over to the Westfield Health YouTube page and give one of them a go. It doesn't have to be strenuous and big bits of activity, but even if it's a little mindful activity they do, could we give staff that ability? And particularly now as it's winter, it is more difficult to go outdoors, but it's important to get that fresh air, that vitamin D, even if it is just encouraging staff after a meeting, instead of spending that 15 minutes typing up notes, could they go and sit on their doorstep for 5 minutes and just have a breathe and get outside? And touching on some of the things that we've done at Westfield that's worked so well for us, as staff have moved into a lot more of a hybrid approach, we've had to really adapt all of these wellbeing initiatives that we've created, because no longer is our workforce in the office. They're now all over the country and working from home. So the best way we did this was make everything hybrid. Things like fitness classes, wellbeing workshops, anything we held, even if the fitness classes were in person, I record them, we put them on our staff intranet or send them via email, just to make sure that people can now do that in their own convenience. So we're no longer asking staff just to do something at a certain time. They've got that kind of toolkit to access at any point. And we've watched people engaged a lot more with things like this, and that's been great. But something in particular that we have found with our staff and our people that have worked so well is sitting for an hour or 2 hours can be lengthy for a lot of people. If you're anything like me, concentration goes very quickly. Starting to create bite-sized pieces, things like sort of 10 minutes of steps and well-being things like Kathy's kind of picked on, mental health talks, and 10 minutes of mindfulness, 5 minutes of energizers, and just having these little bite-sized pieces recorded have been so helpful for staff, because those who can't take an hour away from their time can have little bite-sized kind of physical activity things. And even so, kind of sometimes you can have staff members that are reluctant to do physical activity. It could be nerve-wracking coming on a Zoom call and asking staff to do a little bit of stretching and things. But as employers, as team leaders, as managers, if your staff can see you doing that first, you can be that leadership to them. You can see how much that changes and how staff are a little bit more likely to do things. And it gets them smiling. So don't be afraid as leadership to be the first to say to your team, come on, 5 minutes, let's have a seated stretch. Let's put on the recording that I've done and do something. But it's all down to the employer's encouragement for how much staff engage with things.
Brilliant answer. Thank you so much for that. Just to touch upon the poll, we've had some great comments about what people have been doing. So walking meetings, as you were saying, MA, and lunch walking club, which is a really good idea. I like that one. And it's great to hear that some of the businesses some of the attendees that we've got on the call today are doing initiatives like that within the workplace, which is really good to hear.
Definitely.
So, another question for you, MA. So for those with limited spare time in their day, or for those who are at their desk all day, have you got any examples, quick exercises or tips that can be done either at your desk or can be easily incorporated into someone's day?
Yes, there's lots and lots you can do that we've talked about. I will go back to steps a million times because it's my absolute favorite thing. And for anyone who doesn't know what that is, I feel like I've mentioned it so many times, there are, like I said, you can happily go over to the Westfield YouTube channel, but just stand up out of your desk for a couple of seconds and go and have a walk over to the kettle. Pop the kettle on, being mindful of when you've been an hour kind of meeting, we go back onto that second meeting, and in that period of time between them, we might not have even stood up. So get your daily steps in. It doesn't have to be 10,000, but just something that was better than yesterday is great. So being more mindful to have a wander around. Keep things around your desk too that's going to be more accessible. So some of the staff at Westfield Health, we have things like resistance bands underneath the desks. I have loads in my drawer. Some weights under the desk, a tennis ball to roll out any muscles or your back. Get them so that they're accessible to you and to your staff, and they're a lot more, likely to do it because we're physically looking at things rather than having to go somewhere else. Because again, we're creating movement while being sat down. There's so many different things that we can do, and being mindful of things like posture, making sure that, I'm sure there's people sat on this call right now kind of leant over and looking out of all sorts of places. Just making sure, I saw Kathy just change his name. Making sure our feet are down flat on the floor. Roll those shoulders back. If we're holding tension in our faces and our shoulders, it's going to make us so much more stressed at work. Get those shoulders back, lift that chin, sit confidently. Trying to do little bits, but don't beat yourself up about it too, because you might not be doing as much movement as you once did in the office, but if you do a little bit more than you did yesterday, be proud of yourself, well done, and encourage employees with that. Give them incentives. Try and say to someone, if you've seen someone sat, if you're in the office and they've been sat at that desk for hours, remind them, hey, like, do you want to go and have a little walk around, or why don't we move to this desk, or go and sit by the sun? Pick up on things like that. And it's just important to make sure that we're also exercising our minds, so spending just a few minutes practicing mindfulness and gratitude, because movement isn't just about a physical activity. And there's a great mindfulness, I said great, I did do it, YouTube video over Westfield too, so feel free to have a look at that. But just don't beat yourself up when it comes to movement. Add something new in each day. Try and get those steps up a little bit. Fitness trackers and things are always great. And check in with your posture too. So, yeah.
Little and often.
That's all it is.
I try to set a reminder for every hour just to have a 5-minute walk around, and I'm working from home, I'm remote, so yeah, every hour I just get up and I'll just go for a little walk around my house because we're really busy and we forget how busy we're getting being at home. So walk around, pop the kettle on, but don't stand in the kitchen and wait for your kettle to finish. Go for a walk around until the kettle's finished. Little things to get the steps up, isn't it?
That's it. A couple of calf raises while you're brushing your teeth, or some squats while you're doing popping your kettle on, anything like that. It would just increase that mobility in the joints that have been sat there all day. Any movement you do is better than anything.
Brilliant. So that concludes my questions to both Kathy and Emma, and we've got many questions from our audience which we are going to soon start reading out. So I have been asked about the EAP. So an EAP is an employee assistance program, and if you have one in place, you should be able to obtain posters of that information. Westfield Health, we offer EAPs inbuilt in our cash plan. We also offer standalone EAPs, and we do posters for them. So if you have got a cash plan or an EAP with Westfield, do touch base with your account manager. They will be able to send you the downloadable document that you can print off, but then also we can also post some out to you. So absolutely get these posted and put up around your office and on the back of the toilet doors. So we've got a mental health related question. What should I do if I think an employee might have mental health issues or isn't okay, but they are saying that they're fine?
An interesting one, isn't it? So if you first of all, you're doing the right thing if you're asking and that you've spotted it, so that's great, and you're going to ask them. Now there's lots of reasons why people don't open up about mental health issues. It can be because they don't trust that you'll keep it confidential, they don't trust that you're going to be able to help them, they're nervous about being discriminated against or judged negatively, or stigmatized. So reassure them about all of those things. This is a confidential conversation. This is not going on your HR record, is often another concern. This is between me and you. The only time that you need to break confidentiality when you're having those type of conversations is if there is a crisis, and a crisis would be that somebody is talking about ending their life or hurting themselves in some way. So persevere with wanting to have the conversations. It does go back a little bit to what I said at the beginning, that if you ask somebody once, you ask them twice, or you ask them 3 times, but you know they're really not okay, maybe you're not the right person to be asking. So you might suggest that somebody else ask that question, or even say to them, if I'm not the right person, then here's a list of my mental health first aiders, or you know that you can go and talk to our wellbeing leads. So yeah, don't leave it, but at the same time, don't get it in people's faces either, because it may not be the right time for them to want to open up and talk about what's going on for them. So just communicate that you care, you're interested, you want to help, and you're there as and when they're ready. And then maybe just check in a few days later, because unless there's a crisis going on, then you probably don't need to do anything about it. And the only thing I would just add to that is that if you're a manager, it makes it quite difficult, because if someone's performance is dropping and you notice the performance first, so you think, right, I need to do something to address that, rightly so. So you go and have a conversation. But you also know that something has changed for that person, because people don't suddenly become de-skilled overnight or unknowledgeable or start performing. So you know it's probably to do with something to do with well-being. So put the performance on one side, have a well-being check-in and a conversation. Reassure people this is not about your performance, this is about you. Let's talk about how are you getting on? And know that if you ask those questions, again, you haven't got to fix it. It's about what can we do? What do you need? What can I do to help you? And that's good practice. And I think if managers get into a habit of having those type of conversations, then it will go a long way towards preventing people from developing mental health issues in the first place.
That's a really good point you've made about the link to performance and obviously mental health as well, Kathy. We've had quite a few questions about the mental health first aid training. If any of you are interested in finding out more, then do feel free to get in touch with us or have a look on our website. We'll post the link in the chat as well. But we do offer mental health first aid training, and it is something that we do recommend all businesses look at, and do have mental health first aiders within the organisation. I'd just like to point out that the mental health first aid training isn't for just being in the work day. You know, it's not just going to support somebody within the working hours. You will take that home with you. You'll take that training to see your friends. You'll take that training when you're speaking to clients on the phone. You never know when you're going to need to be called upon to just talk to someone, to offer them some support. I've had personal experience as to when I've needed to support a client's employee and they were actually suicidal, and my mental health first aid training kicked in straight away. So it's definitely something that you will keep with you to nurture, to support others, and not just within the workspace. We've had another question. You mentioned about managers leading by example when working from home. Any tips on how to communicate this to the team? It can feel a little bit unnatural.
Yeah, definitely, particularly with physical activity. It can be scary at first, but it's about creating an open conversation with your team about movement. So I give you quite a good example. I went into a team when I first joined Westfield. I'd kind of gone throughout all of our teams to try and increase a little bit of daily activity by doing really simple things. And a team that I had gone into, for them, going to the gym or doing any kind of physical activity just was not on their radar. And it you know, it was something they first looked at and was kind of like, oh, not too sure about that. But when I started trying to create a bit more of a conversation with them to say, what is it that is physical activity that would be comfortable to you? So for some teams, like I've said, it's getting up and we put dance songs on for 5 minutes and we dance on camera. It's always some interesting dancing on that one, but it's always gets us smiling. But for them, it was something as simple as me popping in for 5 minutes. And as a manager, just going into that call and saying for the first 5 minutes before we start, you know, anyone got any backache, or like, how long have you been sat today? Little tiny kind of conversations can spark that. And even if you go into your team's meeting and you say, okay, first 5 minutes, let's have a little chat. But while we're doing it, can we have a little stretch? So it's great. It's a great little bit of communication, because I think now we're working from home, we forget to just ask simple things like, how are you? And what did you do this weekend? And what did you get up to? Those little water cooler moments that Kathy called them earlier, that we had in the office. So even if it is, you know, you're saying your morning conversation, you have a little stretch, and it's, you know, how are you? What's been going on with you? What did you do over the weekend? And you're just slowly guiding people through. You don't have to be a fitness expert to do a couple of stretches. A little Google, go onto the YouTube video. I did a desk stretching one. Copy a couple of the exercises I did, and you can do them without even having to move out of your seat. But create conversation is my first thing.
Brilliant answer. Thank you for that. Kathy, do you have anything to add about looking after well-being from a management point of view?
So I was just thinking, actually, while listening to Emmy, is that when I'm training people, and occasionally, very occasionally, you get to do it face to face these days, which is great, as in live. And I'm just thinking that I guess I wasn't really thinking too much about it, but one of the things that I do is I say to people, maybe when the energy is dipping a bit, right, let's get up, let's move around, let's walk around, let's do an exercise where you're standing up and you're writing something on a wall. And then you notice that the energy moves in the room and the energy lifts. And of course, your physical and your mental health are so inextricably linked. And not to underestimate what Emmy's saying about being physical and moving. You don't have to go and run a marathon. You're just getting out. And one of the things that I do sometimes, I just think, well, I really would like to go for a walk today, but I know I'm really busy. But I'm going to put my walking stuff on, or my running stuff on, because if I'm sat in it, there's a psychological thing that's saying, you really need to go and do this now. And I even give myself permission to walk out the door, and if I really don't want to do it, I can come back in. But of course, the point is, once you've got a foot out the door, you're not going to come back in. You're going to go and walk, aren't you? Even if you put it shorter. So I think there's these psychological things that you can do that support your physical health, and therefore will support your mental health, because they are so inextricably linked. They are not separate. And I also understand that when you're feeling down and depressed, then sometimes that's difficult. But if you can just push yourself to do a little bit, then it does make a bit of a difference. And then as it makes a difference, you get a bit more confidence, you start to feel better, and so it starts to help. So Sam, I've forgotten your question now. What did you ask me?
You mentioned about managers leading by example when looking after their well-being. When working from home, any tips on how to communicate this to the team, as it can feel a little bit unnatural? So Emma's touched upon, you know, the physical well-being, get moving, and just lead by example. And again, you don't have to be a personal trainer to do that. But I was just wondering, Kathy, if you get anything from, you know, the mental well-being side of things for that person that's asked that question.
I think that it reminds me that when you say to managers, right, okay, we need to do more well-being initiatives with our staff, and you can see managers feeling a bit uncomfortable and awkward, and then they do something and the staff respond with, they've been on a course, yeah, and it seems a bit unnatural. But I think the point here is do it anyway. You know, even if it is a little bit awkward and a little bit unnatural, then do it anyway, because it's going to make a difference. And after a while, people will start to, this is normal. This is what we do. We have a bit of a laugh and we do these things, and it starts to make a difference. And it comes back to something that we've been saying here, be proactive about it and be willing to get involved yourself, because if people see you doing it, even if they see you uncomfortable, then they're more likely to want to come along with you. So you are role modeling, you're leading by example. So,
and the more you do it, the more it becomes natural as opposed to unnatural, isn't it? So yeah, brilliant. Well, thank you both for that answer. Next question, what sort of things have you done or could be done for employees working in manufacturing who are on their feet all day doing physical activities?
I think from my perspective, from a physical side, because I think it might be interesting as well to become kind of from a mental wellbeing side, but from a physical side, if employees are on their feet constantly throughout the day, then the words don't become how can we create more movement for them, it becomes how can we help them recover. Because if you're constantly on your feet and in a very proactive job, then we need to make sure that you're looking after your physical well-being in terms of recovery. So is there things involved for like you know, helping with any kind of musculoskeletal issues that might be going on? Is there things that are in place for making sure that they've got the correct uniform in terms of shoes? Have they got the right footwear to keep it up all day that's going to look after their physical health? Kind of have we got stretching involved? Have we got things like foam rollers kind of in the office that they're not just for physical activity, tennis balls to make sure if you're up all day on your feet, particularly in manufacturing, handling heavy machinery, the amount of times you're going to get hunched over so quick, and having a tennis ball in the canteen or a staff room for someone to be able to put on their back, roll against a wall for a couple of seconds, it's going to promote better physical well-being. So it's not kind of particularly within that, it's not about how can we get them to move even more in a day, it's how can we look after their physical health for recovery and making sure that they are supported and can stay on their feet for long periods of time. So checking in with shoes and uniform, putting things in a canteen like tennis balls, foam rollers, massage guns if you've got the budget are amazing and you'll be thanked, and looking at all things in place for things like physio and lots of water and nutritious foods, things like that, where I would go for people on their feet all day.
Thank you for that. Westfield Health have actually started putting webinars together for that very topic for people who are on the go all the time, and how they can then recover and have some downtime and just make sure they're looking after themselves. So if you do want to find out a little bit more information on the webinar that we've put in specifically for that reason, do get in contact with Westfield Health, and we can put you in contact with one of the consultants who can talk you through that. Kathy, I have a question for you now. How do we answer the questions and signpost for those who are not coping and don't want to accept help?
Okay, there are two responses that I want to give to this one. First of all, you can't force people to do things, and at the same time, when people are not coping, generally speaking, what they want is support and encouragement, connection and signposting. They don't want fixing. And I know I keep saying this because I think that when you start going into advising and fixing, you are disempowering. And so people who are not coping, they don't want you to disempower them. They want to know where they can get some help from. And aside from all the lovely things that are available with Westfield Health, if you want something a little bit more specific from a mental health point of view, there is a brilliant website set up called Hub of Hope, HUB, Hub of Hope. And this was set up by a charity in 2017, so it's fairly new. And what they've done, they've brought together all the different mental health services that are available in a particular area. So you put your postcode in, and what pops up is a list of things that are available to you in your area. So it's very specific. And so if it's about an eating disorder or self-harm or suicide, you can put that into the search engine with your postcode, and what's available to you will pop up. So in answer to that question, you can signpost people. Here's some information that is available to you. Let me give you this information. You're offering to support them personally. You're wanting to provide empathy, understanding, compassion. And sometimes it's asking people, what do you need? What can I do? What can I do that's going to help you feel better? That is such a great empowering question. What can I do to help you? And sometimes people say, I don't know. And of course, you know, that's possible. They don't know. Say, okay, well, I'm here as and when. And sometimes people just want to offload and talk and connect with you. I can't underestimate the value of empathy and compassion, and understanding that you don't need to have the answer, and you don't need to sort people out. You know, that's not our job. We want to empower people, and we know from a mental health point of view that if people are empowered, then they are more likely to recover quicker and to be able to cope and move forward. And remember as well that I often say to people, remember that physical illness If you think about how you would treat a physical illness, so if someone says to you, oh, I've just been diagnosed with a thyroid issue, or oh, I think I've broken my arm, oh, I'm feeling really uncomfortable, or I've really hurt myself here, what would you do? What would you say to that person? And if you think about that, you'd probably say, oh gosh, no, how can I help? What do you need? Do we need to make some adjustments to you so you can be in the workplace? Because even though someone has a mental health issue, it doesn't mean that they have to take time off. The workplace is often a great place for people to be, even if they're not performing at 100%. Better that they're in the workplace performing at 60%. Because if they go off sick, one, you've lost that person performing in any way, and secondly, they're more likely to stay off sick. And the longer they're off sick, then the longer it will be. So encourage people to be in the workplace, build a culture that encourages conversations around mental health and physical health, and make it part of the norm. And then you'll find that people who aren't coping are more likely to come forward and have these conversations, because the trust will be built up. And often that's what it's about. It's the fear that people have of being judged negatively. It's the reason why they don't come forward. So
thank you for that, Kathy. Do you mind quickly just repeating the website that you mentioned, just for those that didn't manage to take a note down of that?
It's called the Hub of Hope, H-U-B of Hope, H-O-P-E, Hub of Hope.
Hub of Hope, brilliant. Thank you so much for that. Thank you, Emma and Kathy, for your time today and answering those questions. And thank you for everyone for taking the time to join us, and with our panelists for sharing their expertise. Free resources in the handout section of your screen, so you can get access to those, and we'd appreciate your feedback. So you should see a link to a survey in your browser window when you leave today's webinar, and you'll also receive an email shortly with a link to the survey and the recording of the webinar. So please do give us your feedback. If you'd like to speak to one of our health and wellbeing consultants on anything that we've spoken about today, or if you would like to find out a bit more about what we do here at Westfield Health, do get in contact with us, or speak to your account manager if you do have one. And you can email us on businessinquiries@westfieldhealth.com. I'm just